Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary Series. This is episode 15, and if you'll recall from our previous episode, we finally got the fretboard glued on our very first mandolin in this batch of 11 mandolins. It is mandolin number 1, obviously, and the only thing left to glue on it is our Peghead overlay. So that's where we're going to start this week. We're going to glue on the Peghead overlay. So, after the Peghead overlay dries, then the real work starts. The preparation for the finish application. There's a whole lot left to be done. The neck is still in its rough-shaped, rasped state, so it is way out of spec from where it's going to eventually wind up being. That all has to be addressed and taken care of. And then we're going to sand the entire mandolin down through all the grits of finish, starting at the coarse ones and ending up with 220 grit finish. That entire process to get the mandolin from where it's at now till it's ready to put the stain on, depending on whether it's an F or an A, and depending on how many interruptions you have and how rough things are, can take anywhere from a day and a half, sometimes up to 2 days to do. So I'm going to shoot finish while we do number 1, and then try to compress all that down into a few seconds of watchable video, and we'll play it for you right now. The glue squeeze out around the fingerboard is the first job to be tackled. I did that engraving right there as a practice project when I was learning how to use a new engraving tool. Here we're rasping the neck. I could write a book on that, but really what you're trying to achieve is the right size and the shape and the feel of the neck. Making sure that the fretboard extender tabs flow into the edge of the fretboard nice and smooth. Now I'm cleaning up the truss rod nut pocket. And after that, cutting the slot for the bone nut. One final sanding of the sound hole edges. We want the shape of the sound hole with the round parts nice and round and the corners good and sharp. I'm sanding the radius into the fretboard in preparation for installing the frets. And then we'll be installing the frets. and of course filing the sharp clipped ends of those frets. Let me pause for a moment and explain to you that the clips you just got through watching actually represent an entire 8-hour day. I started yesterday morning and started shooting those clips as we did the jobs, and by the time we got to the end of the jobs, which was cleaning off the fret ends, the day was gone. It was quitting time. So the mandolin as it stands right now is ready to proceed with the final sanding phase. It's mostly 100 grit. It needs to be sanded down to 220. It needs to be wet again, 220 again. That whole raising the grain process that we saw in a previous episode on the top just before we glued the fretboard on. And then it will be ready to tape up the spots that we don't want finished or stain on, and then put the stain on and apply the first clear coats. So let's see how far along we can get today. Okay, all of the final sanding has been done and it's time to tape this thing up. We're going to tape up the fretboard and the truss rod slot. And we'll take some stiff paper, slip it down in here to help break the overspray, keep the insides from being so nasty. Now I have drilled and tapped a hole here exactly where the hole will be in the tailpiece, and I have a threaded rod with a wooden handle that will go in there. And now I have a safe, sturdy handle that I can handle this mandolin with. So my customer emailed me a photo of his desired color for this mandolin, and it's sort of real close to one of those Chinese fiddles, sort of an orangey brown. And I experimented around with several different ways to try to come up with the closest color that I could. And what seemed to happen best, or what seemed to work best, was to wipe the instrument with a medium brown and then wipe it with a weak orange, sort of a weak orange color, and then go back over and airbrush another light color, a weakened medium brown. So that's what we're going to do right now. I found if you just put just a hint of yellow on it, it really gives it a nice rich color. And now this first coat is just a tack coat to hold the color on so that we can scrape the binding. And that's all we can do for the day. We're going to let all of that dry up real good, and we'll need to scrape the binding and the little side dots on the fingerboard and everything tomorrow, and then we can start on our build coats to actually put the finish proper on. So a broad overview of the finishing process consists of preparing the wood, of course, applying the stain, cleaning up any excess stain that you don't want to be in the finished product, and in this particular instance we're talking about scraping the binding, and then applying the clear coats. And that's where we're at here with mandolin number 1. We have done all of those things, and it is time to apply the clear coat. So we're going to cut this video short here, and I'd like to invite you to come back next week for the next episode in the Ratliff Mandolins weekly production diary series. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Thank you for your interest, and hit the like and subscribe button, and hopefully we'll see you next week in the next issue of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary Series. See you then.